Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight for our webinar on resumes and a little bit about extracurriculars. I'll give it a couple of minutes while people file in a little bit, but my name is Ellen Valadares. I am an educational consultant for JRA Educational Consulting, and tonight we're presenting about your resume makes all the difference in college admission and more. So I just want to mention ahead of before I get started, when I go into presentation mode, I'm not able to see the chat, but I am interested if you guys have questions and definitely want to hear your questions, and I will take them at the end of the presentation. So again, while I'm in presentation mode, I can't really see the chat because I'm the only one here tonight. So at the end, though, if you can stick with it, we should be about 45 minutes or so for the presentation, and then I'll take your questions if you have any. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully everybody can see me and hear me. I just want to check that we are going on here. I think so. Okay. So hold on 1 second. All right. So let's get started. Just want to tell you, we are broadcasting on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and it is being recorded. So if you miss anything, just tune in back to YouTube and Facebook Live, and you can find the recording of it. So tonight's agenda, we're going to be focusing again mostly on why the importance of having a resume for your college applications. But in talking about that, we're going to go over the admissions kind of overview, what role extracurricular activities play in that. We're going to look at what colleges look for in your extracurricular commitments and how they learn about those activities. And then we're going to really get into the importance of having the activity resume and some tips and do's and don'ts about creating your resume that I hope it will really be helpful for you, no matter where you are in the process, if you're a freshman, sophomore, or even a senior who's kind of getting ready to apply maybe to regular decision schools. So we have some downloads for this webinar. There is an activity resume worksheet. You can find the downloads at scorewebinar.com, and they're also below the description. So, but anyway, we have for you an activity resume worksheet that I hope will be helpful. It's something I use with my students just to help you kind of list everything you've done and get started on the resume. And then we have a list of the Common App colleges that allow you to upload a resume. And then we have a tip sheet about your resume and the additional information section. And finally, a list of action verbs, which I love, which is really helpful. So as you're doing both your resume and your activities section on the Common App. So developing an edge. Let's talk about what the college admissions officers are looking for when they say they're looking at your applications holistically. But there are factors, and the first factor being rigorous curriculum and strong grades that trend upward, your SAT scores. But coming in at number 4, right below those numbers, are your passionate involvement, your extracurriculars, your leadership, and any initiative you've taken. So they're really looking at what you've done during your high school years. And then, there's other parts of the application process, of course, your essays and recommendations, etc. But tonight we're really focusing on your extracurriculars and the resume. So, what creates like a meaningful extracurricular? Again, we're going to talk about this a lot tonight, but admissions officers are not really looking for you to have 20 things that you did and just, of all different kinds. They're really looking for a depth of commitment rather than a breadth. They're looking for really depth and something that you've put your heart and soul into, over your years, something that maybe you gained some leadership in, maybe you took initiative and maybe you created something. They're looking for, definitely, they love to see that you're collaborating with others and that you're creating impact, whether it's in your community or for other people. A lot of, importance can be put sometimes on the relevance to your major. If you're wanting to be a comp sci major, then it would be great to have, some related activities, of course, that, where you were doing your comp sci work. And one of the other great things is they look for, that you've created a legacy and you've done things that are going to continue even after you leave, and that's a really big plus. So again, fewer activities but greater depth of commitment, that's what they're looking for. And it can go into all kinds of different things, and we're talking about not just, the typical clubs and organizations that you think about, but your meaningful extracurriculars, anything that you've given time to while you're in high school. So if that's caring for a family member, or paid work is a big one. I think students sometimes think that paid work doesn't really count as a major, but schools love to see that. They love to see that because it takes a commitment, a dedication, a time management, all those things that you're gaining responsibility from that. So a lot of, different things that you can be involved in. Maybe you're a guitar player or a piano player. Maybe you're really into scouting. There's so many different things that you can be involved in. Um, and one thing to quickly mention, it is even more important, your extracurriculars and your activities, if you're applying test optional to a school, because especially for the selective universities, once you're taking away that kind of component of having that test score, we have to make up for that by having really strong, really strong, showings in the other. So, strong GPA, and hopefully your activities are going to be so strong that it makes up for that missing piece that they're looking at holistically. And also, as we've said, that they do look at your activities in relation to major sometimes, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Some of the things they look at in evaluating your extracurriculars are going to be how many years that you participated, how many hours, the level of your leadership role, the relevance to your major, and the impact. And something else we want to just talk, and I'm kind of going through this quickly because I want to spend most of the time really talking about the resume. Um, there, every activity is wonderful, and really what they really want to see is your commitment and that you've grown and learned. What the impact has really been on you is important as much as the impact that you've created. But there are, especially when we're talking about the selective universities out there, there are tiers that will catch an admissions officer's eye. And so I'm just going to go over those really quickly. So a tier one activity for might look like to a university is something that's kind of rare, but that is an exceptional leadership position, that really was like a national. Maybe you won the national spelling bee, or you won a national award, participated in a national level debate thing where you've gained a very prestigious ranking, So those are the kinds of things that really are gonna make you stand out, because you are a standout, because obviously within the nation you're standing out. So that would be a tier one kind of a thing. Tier two is going to be just, leadership, but maybe on the state level. So maybe it's a state debate win, maybe it's a band, state competition that you won, or model UN or student government. But still on a pretty big scale. So those are the ones that are needed for the selective colleges. Um, then we have tier three, which would be more on a regional level or your school level, but showing leadership. And so, maybe it's not like, you're the president, but maybe you're a secretary or treasurer, or maybe you've won some kind of regional championship or gotten a title like player of the week. And then tier four, which, is great. You're still, participating and showing that level of commitment, of solid, staying with something, a steady commitment, and that's still very important. And there's no such thing as a bad activity. So again, these are just some of the highlights of, if you're an admissions officer, what they're looking for when they're looking at, what you've done for extracurriculars. And so they want to see, again, that you have a passion and talent, and that's not something that they don't want you to choose activities. This is something I think is so important, just that look good, right? It's really something, when they can tell when it's something that really aligns with your interests and what, your heart and soul is into. So you really kind of want to find those things that light you up and then dig into those. Otherwise, it's not really worth it. They want to see that initiative, of course. And so, you have a lot of opportunities sometimes. Maybe you're an avid reader, but there's not a book club at your school. You can always create that book club in your school. And so that shows initiative. But initiative can look like a lot of different things. Maybe it's that you just decided to head up a certain committee within an organization that you're in, so it can take a lot of different things. Impact, again, can look like a lot of different things. And the admissions officers always, when you present something, their question is, okay, so what? And so that impact is going to answer that question. You know, so what that you were on, in this club that, goes and visits elderly people. But the so what is, how did it impact the people? Did you sit and visit with those people? Did you listen to their stories? And did you help with loneliness? That's kind of, the impact. And again, they're looking for that connection to your major. And something I want to point out is, and we'll talk about this with the resumes, it's always a positive thing to quantify any results. Let's say you started a club and you grew it from, the first time you met, you had 5 members, but you went out there recruiting members, and all of a sudden you're up to 25 members. So say you grew the club to 25 members, or maybe you raised, $5,000 for something, so quantify that and let them know. And that really talks about impact as well. So the ways that the colleges learn about what you've done as you're applying to college is going to be in how you communicate it, right? So there's a few ways that they are going to see what you've done. So the first being on the Common App, which I think many of you know, unless you're early on in the process, that is the application that you will fill out for most of your colleges. And they have within that an activity section, and we'll show you a little bit coming up about that activity section. And another big way that they're going to see that is your resume, which we're going to focus on. And also in essays, which, for instance, University of Florida for the last several years has had an essay asking you to elaborate on one of your most meaningful commitments. And so that's a great way to really get into storytelling about what you've accomplished and how you've impacted and how you've been impacted. And do remember to do that when you're writing those kinds of essays. They want to know how you've been changed by participating in this activity, what you've gained and how you've grown. So this is, we're going to talk a little bit about, the Common App activities section. You want to report activities, we say yes. And then this is what you'll see on the Common App. So you will get to fill in the type of activity. In this case, it was career oriented. It's a drop down menu. It could say athletic or there's all kinds of different activities. And then you will fill in the position and leadership and the organization name. And then you get this box to describe in a whole 150 characters total, including spaces, everything that you did. So just wanted to point this out because it is a very tight space that you have. So it's really important how you use your words, and you can abbreviate, as you can see in the sample that we have, if you can see it on your screen, like we have we did the W/. So you can use and signs, you can use abbreviations, but you definitely want it to make sense. But my point is that you don't have a lot to work with in that section. And you do want to make that work because some colleges are only going to see that. So that's important. And then you'll see, they will see what grade you did it and for how many hours. So the resume becomes important. Why is the resume important? Because first and foremost, it's going to give you a chance to elaborate in so much more detail about what your activities have involved and what you've accomplished than you get on that little activities section. Now, as we'll tell you, not every college is going to accept the resume, but your resume is still important for so many reasons. It still can help you to have a resume because you can use that as you fill out your activity section. And so you have all the information there. You have it for the colleges that do take it, and it can help you in so many different ways. It also allows you to give something to your teachers. Very often when you're asking for a letter of recommendation, they're going to say to you, well, can I have your resume? And you're going to be, oh, I don't have that. But you're going to be like, oh, I do have that because we went to that webinar and that lady said it was important. So you have that resume, and you're going to hand them that resume, which is going to help them. That's not all you want to give them. That's a whole nother discussion, but that's going to be really helpful overview for them to see the kind of involvements that you've been. It's also just a great thing. One of my favorite things about doing the resume with my students is that sometimes I feel like the students feel like, oh, I didn't really do that many things. I'm not even sure if I need a whole resume. And then when we put it together, it's such a confidence builder because you see yourself on paper and it's like, wow, because you're showing everything that you've done from the summer before ninth grade up until starting in 12th grade, say, and then it's all detailed, and you look amazing. And this is a place in your resume where you do get to boast a little bit with humility, but it is the place where you're gonna really want to boost up everything that you have done. Whereas when in your personal statement, that's not the place for it. You're being humble about what you've accomplished. But your resume is really like, I've won these awards, and you can quantify things and you can tell all kinds of details. So there's so many great ways to do that. But I do love, like, just when you see that and you see yourself on paper, it's a great confidence builder and a reminder of what you've been doing. Sometimes we're so busy doing all these things, you forget all that you've accomplished, and it's really great. Also, it's a great thing to have whether you're applying for a job or an internship, later for scholarships in your process, an honor society. They may all ask for the resume, and so you'll have it available for that. And so this is something you want to start working on as soon as possible, whether you're in freshman, sophomore year, whatever. You can always start and you just keep adding to it, right? The other thing is that once you submit your applications, many selective universities will do interviews, like alumni interviews, and it's very helpful whether they take the resume. Sometimes they'll want it, sometimes they won't, but even for you to have talking points and have it in front of you. So many wonderful things. Your resume tells your story and really helps you stand out. And that's what your whole college application is about, is telling the story. And so your resume is just another piece that really helps bring that out and help them see. So again, let's talk about this, that on the Common App, we're saying not every college is going to ask for the resume. Something that really confuses students is that we'll do the resume and they'll look on the Common App portion and they'll say, but Ellen, there's no place to upload my resume there. So that's not where it goes. It doesn't go because it's not something that goes to every college. It's something very specific to each college. And only, so there's about 1,100 colleges, I think, now on Common App. And over 300 of those now do allow you to upload. And so there's different ways. These are an example of a few. There's different ways they can do it. So on their college specific questions, often it's in the activities, under the activities section of their questions. And they'll say, if you have a resume, please feel free to upload it. It's not usually anything that's required. Another way that the colleges might get the resume is after you apply to the college and you've set up your application portal where you go and submit, make sure they have all your materials that they need. You may be able to submit, like for instance, like Florida State University, you can do it both ways. You can submit it on the application and you can submit it on the portal, and you see some of theirs. Then there are a couple of schools that still just have their own application. Georgetown is coming onto Common App next year, but for right now, they have their own application still, and MIT has always had their own application. And so through their own application, they invite you to do it. So there's a lot of different ways that schools. And I just want to show you a little example of what this might look like on the Common App. So on the Common App, in your college, under your colleges, and you're doing your college questions for University of Central Florida, and you get to the activity section, and then you'll see this pop up. If you wish to submit your resume, you may upload it here. And it tells you. So something I want to mention while we're talking about this, and something I saw this year, when you upload your resume, make sure that it's saved as a PDF and that it's saved with just your name, nothing else. So, for me, it would say Ellen Balladere's PDF, or Ellen Balladere's resume PDF, right? So I noticed on one of my students, they had uploaded their resume and it said, like, it was a Canva name, like white version. And then it had Ellen edit on there. And that's the last thing we want, is for them to see that, you had somebody editing. I mean, of course, you're going to have people editing, but the professional way to do it is to have your name, resume, PDF. So just a little note on that. So here, just to show you of what you can possibly do, what's the difference of resume versus activity section. So this is the resume of the person who had the same activity. And while we did get a lot into that activity box about this, she spent the week in the life of a medical student at the Brown University pre-college program. And we said sparked desire to pursue medical profession, attended lectures, examined cadaver, simulated patient rounds, interacted with students from around the world. So that says a lot of great things. And that's a lot that was taken from these bullet points. But then if you really have the bullet points, you see where you can expand on what you're saying, acquired a deeper understanding and admiration for the medical profession, attended lectures, anatomy, medical ethics, illnesses, medical imaging. So much more detail there. And we can see on the last bullet, she did patient rounds, which we said there, but here we can see, oh wow, she got to do an abdominal exam, an ultrasound, and she took the blood pressure, listened to hearts and lungs. So much more rich detail that adds. So that's just the power of the resume. So now what I want to get into is kind of what is the difference between your activity resume and a professional career resume. And what I mean by a professional career resume is that's a resume really where you're seeking a job. And you still might even use that if you're going to apply for any job, even as a high school student, you would need like a career resume. But it's very different. Your activity resume is going to be different, and we're going to talk about some of those differences. One of them being is that, and this is a myth, and I'm going to say it a few times tonight, the business resume really should typically be one page. Your activity resume does not have to be only one page. So many people think that because that's the typical resume thing. But for your high school activity resume, for your college applications, it can be 2, maybe even 3 pages. We say 1 to 2 is better. But it's just as long as it's readable and you're putting in pertinent, meaningful information, it's fine to have it be more than 1 page. So also you'll see like education is included, and your profile, summary, professional skills. This is all very professional. This is not what we're doing on our activity resumes, and I'm going to show you some samples of that. The other thing is that you're going to see you list things in descending chronological order on a business resume, and you'll list the years, but we're going to do that differently on the activity resume. So here's an example. This is the same student with the that we were with the week in the life of the medical student. So you can see this is a 2-page resume, and instead of listing years, even though for summer things we say summer and the year, but for most of the things we're going to say the grade. Many times this student has grade 12, you don't even have to say the word grade. A lot of times we just put it in. And then we have, the different categories, which we're going to talk about. And very detailed bullet points that discuss what you did, why you did it, the impact, what you gained, all these things. And with your honors, other interests, and things coming at the end. Now, there's so many different ways you can design the resume. And part of that is really deciding, kind of who you are and how you want your design to be. So there's a lot of flexibility in that per se, but we're going to give you kind of some guidelines of what, should be on there and shouldn't be on there. So again, just to compare, again, your activity resume can be more than 1 page. It should be in order of your most meaningful, not chronological. So in order of most meaningful activities, you're going to use grades, you're going to use unique category headings, and you don't need that activity section. And so here's what we're going to get into the meat now, a little bit of what should be on there. So you're going to include only your most meaningful activities during high school. And what do we mean by meaningful? Students always, what does that mean? And is it meaningful to me or meaningful to them? So really both. But I always say, really, what was the most meaningful thing that was for you? What impacted you the most? What transformed you? And where did your time commitment really go? So that's what you're looking at as far as most meaningful. And then you're going to organize your activities. So the order of operations could be to make a list, and we gave you kind of that worksheet that you could work with, of listing from the most meaningful to the least meaningful, all the activities that you've done and when you've done them. And you can even just start there and you'll come back to the bullet points. But then you want to organize your activities into categories with the most important categories. So let's say you're an athlete and that's been your thing, and maybe you're a swimmer, and maybe you also played water polo. And so athletics would probably be the category that would come first on your resume. And within that category, you're going to put whatever is most meaningful and most important within that category. So if swimming was the most important, that's going to come first, and then water polo, and then maybe you played lacrosse also. It could be, but you'll list them in the order. So that's what we just said. And then you're going to list your honors last. So honors, awards, honor societies, just because, on some of the Canva resumes, there are places on the side where you could do it on the side, and it's not necessarily at the back of the resume, but it's not something that we're just putting at the top, because that's where we're showing a little bit of humility here. You're not including your GPA, your rank, your test scores, any courses. I see often people say relative course work. And I think that's coming off of a template, of some other kind of resume, but that's also not something that we need, because remember, these people are also getting your application. So they're seeing all this in your application. Your application is going to contain your current courses and your test scores and your GPA. So we don't need to take up space and reiterate all that on the resume. Okay, so here are some, I love this, and this is a great screen that you can screenshot if you want, that really shows some great categories. Yeah. Sorry, just checking that we are live still. So these are some great categories that you can use. And again, you can create your own. This is where you can get a little creative. And you're telling your own story. So say, like, I'm somebody that's really been into debate and politics, and I want to major in poli-sci. So I would put debate and politics as my first category and really list all the things that come under there. Maybe you're really a musician, and but you've played both clarinet and piano. You can do it like this. So there's not like just these set things where you'll see work experience. We want you to kind of come up with the categories that describe, yours. So that's why the best way is to list all of your activities and then go back and kind of group them. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, so these are my STEM related ones, and these are my summer enrichment ones, and I see these are my athletics. And then you're going to decide. It's like a little puzzle piece at first, but it can be a fun puzzle piece. And so now when we get into what the wording should be, let's talk about that, and what goes on the resume. So first you're going to have the name of the activity. I'm going to give you some examples so you actually see, because it's easier to see when it's written out. So an overview statement, that's kind of an optional thing, but I'll show you some examples with overview statements, and sometimes it's very helpful, especially if it's a very meaningful activity, or maybe it's a club that you founded, so it needs a little extra statement about why you founded the club or something about that. Or maybe it's just an organization that you've been involved with that also needs a little explanation. But we'll show you some. I will show you some examples. And so your bullet points are going to list why you did the activity, how you did it, what you accomplished, how you and others were impacted, and recognitions last. So again, so always think about, again, quantifying, start with, okay, what did I do? I attended meetings, I took notes at meetings, and just kind of think of, the things that you did, and then go into the impact. We visited rehab homes and played games with elderly residents and put on shows for them and kept them company and wrote letters to them on holidays, things like that. And we'll show you some. But always come back to the question. This is what I tell my students. What did I gain from it? And we don't often ask ourselves that. So that's the hard question. What did I gain? Did I learn to be a team player? Did I learn time management skills? Think about the skills you gained, or how it impacted you. Did it inspire you to pursue a certain career? Those are things that can go in those bullet points. And when we're putting together these resumes and for your activity section, you want to think of some really strong verbs that are powerful, and we don't want to use the same ones all the time, right? So not just repeating gained, I coordinated, and again, when you're doing these resume wording, you're not going to put in the word I, but the word I is kind of invisible in front of it. So think about it that way. So invisible I, achieved, da 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 da, enhanced, monitored, supervised. Another thing I want to mention while we're looking at this is past or present. So if it's something that, say you did in 10th grade, and you're now in 12th grade, but you did it only in 10th grade, then the bullet points are going to be in past tense, right? So communicated, with teachers about the importance of sustainability. Okay, but say now you're still doing this activity, 10, 11, 12, you've been doing it for 3 years. You wouldn't put communicated. It would be current because you're still doing that. So communicate with teachers about the importance of sustainability. So that's something you want to go back sometimes and proofread yourself and make sure it makes sense. Some of the things may be in past tense if it's something like you're saying, gained, communication skills, that probably happened in the past, but something that you're currently doing, make sure it's in present tense. Oh, I want to just mention, this is one of the downloads we gave you has many, many, many more words and kind of put into categories that I think you'll find very helpful when you're creating your resume. So let's get into a few of some sample wording things of what that might look like. So say this was, probably under the athletics category, and they were a varsity baseball player, grades 9 through 12. Now see how they list the titles. So your leadership comes captain, and then put the grade that you were the captain, because you weren't captain every year. Maybe you were, I don't know. But this person was captain only in 12th grade, and then they were also a starting outfielder. So put that in bold up top, and then you're going to get into your bullets. And here's a great example of an overview statement. So another question that comes up is, do I include anything like from middle school that I had activities? So the answer is generally no. These are only activities on this resume from high school, maybe the summer before high school, up through 12th grade. But some people do have some major activities. Maybe you're a dancer or an athlete who has been doing something most of your life. Or maybe it started in middle school and you're still doing something now. That would be maybe a time where you could put 7 through 12, but those are rare instances. But this is also a great way to handle it in your overview statement, a natural extension of my involvement with baseball since age 5. So now we know this person has played baseball, and that's been a lifelong commitment for this person. And then you can see some of the strong verbs, and and the descriptions, mentor freshman players through practice drills. Okay, we're already showing mentoring is a wonderful thing to show, that you're leading younger players, younger kids, anything is always wonderful to show. Personally raise $1,000 plus to support the team. Again, quantifying what you've done. Honed my skills in 2 baseball camps at UPenn with the years, if you did in grades 10 and 11. What a great point, to show that you did those, baseball camps. And then we get to some of the awards. I've been Offensive Player of the Year award, and it has the batting average and so on. Here's another example. Renaissance yearbook. They did it 10 to 12. Again, they were a copy editor in 12th grade, and then the assistant section editor only in 11. And so here's where you'll list the most current position first, and then so on and so on. So if you had another position in 10th grade, that would come below that. Again, here's another example of an overview statement. An exciting opportunity to develop my writing and design talents beyond the classroom. And so that's just a great added statement that tells me a lot about the student and where their passion lies, right? Gained expertise in creating the yearbooks by participating in 3 off-campus training programs and seminars, strengthened my communication skills by interviewing a diverse population of students and faculty member, developed an aptitude for creating aesthetically pleasing layouts, beautiful words, and then some of the awards, and they talk about mentoring. So you're getting the feel for kind of, for those kinds of things. Now, what if you do have something like you've done a lot of competitions? I see that with like Mu Alpha Theta or something like debate where you've really, a lot of that involvement has been competition and winning awards. And so this would be an example of a way to do that. And a great overview statement, like an amazing way to extend my study of mathematics beyond the classroom through competition and tutoring, and then list the competitions and your places, and divide like state competition, if there's a national competition, regional competition, and just give what you won and what the category was. And so that is another thing you can do on a resume when you have those kinds of awards. So that was a lot, but let me now show you a few sample resumes so you see kind of the different ways. So one of the biggest things these days really is that you can use Canva. Is a great tool, and I'm sure there's others out there. Canva is a wonderful free tool that I know I've used a lot and my students use. And there's maybe a little learning curve, but there's so much fun to it because you can add colors and pictures and kind of, once you learn to work with it, there's a lot you can do with it. You can also use templates in Google Docs or Word, in Word. So there's all kinds of things. But let's show you some of our favorite ways, and favorite resumes, and just how you can see kind of how they look. So this is done on a Microsoft Word template, and this is kind of what we call like a table format, but this is something I really love. And again, if this is your thing for showing pictures, that's great. If this is kind of not your thing, then you don't have to do. But it's a great thing because you look at it, you get kind of a snapshot really quickly of, student government, youth leaders, gardens. I see kind of a lot of things going on there without just having the words, there. And definitely the design does matter. I love the bullet points. I've seen some resumes where people just paragraph it out, and that's really hard to read. You really want white space. Again, remember, these admissions people are looking at hundreds and hundreds of applications and resumes, and they're going to glance at this pretty quickly. So you want things to stand out, right? So, what stands out to me is, look, founder. She was a founder of a club. And, so I might really look into that. And I see the Shamrock, and that draws me in. And, a hospital thing. And I think that, she did mention in her essay that she was, interested in healthcare. So it all kind of comes together. So that's it. This is an example. This was done quite a while ago on a Canva one. Another one with little pictures that kind of bring your eye or tell you kind of what the activity is about. But also, what I want to point out is a lot of students ask the question, um, should I put my picture? Especially when you go on Canva, a lot of those samples show pictures of the person. So that's kind of like a personal thing if you want your picture or not. For college applications, I think, we tend to think, we kind of want it to be anonymous. We don't want them to be judging you by your looks or anything, unless it's, they're if you have an interview, they're going to see you, or a video, they're going to see you. Um, but this is a great example of a good way to use a picture because she's obviously into art and she's showing herself at with an art easel, and she's not really showing her face. So I love that. I love if you can come up with an artistic way to kind of where you're not really showing your whole face, but showing maybe something. If you're a musician, maybe you're with your instrument, or an athlete with your something, doing something athletic. That's kind of fun. Again, like, it's personal to you, but the picture is not a needed thing and not a necessary thing. So here's an example, and I wanted to show you. This is another format. This is definitely, we can blow this up a little bit. So this is an example of somebody who really had like a lot of awards and things through cheerleading. So this is really list heavy on things that and cheerleading was their main event. But what I want to also point out to you is that something you can do with these resumes is this is done in colors for Clemson, and this was submitted with the Clemson, when for the Clemson application. So you can change it for the different colleges. When you do that, however, do make sure that you're not just guessing like, oh, orange and blue. Every college has like a specific color, official color. So you Google that and you look up what are Clemson's official colors, and it'll give you like a hex code or RBG, and you use those codes to find the exact color. You can do that in Canva, and I think even in Microsoft Word, I know you can. And you use those exact colors for the resume. And it's a fun way to show your spirit and your desire to really attend that school. Here's one of my favorite ones this year. Was really great. This student got so creative. And again, I love just the first look. This was, obviously it's very bright, but it is for, this was a UF submitted application. And this student was aerospace. So there's the little rover, the space rover, and here they were a teacher's assistant and the little science lab. These pictures just really tell a story. And then on the other side, I see the guitar. How cool. This is like, already I'm like, aerospace, science, guitar. Wow, this kid like has a great balance, and now I want to know more. So those pictures used in whatever way that you want to use them can really draw attention. But again, I do want you to see like the clean look of it, and that you have space between the activities. And that's why we don't want to get caught up in the one page thing, because then everything would be tiny and really hard to read. The objective that you see here, again, very optional, I would say. You can put something, if you are really going for a certain major and you have done things within your high school career and you feel you have something to say and you want to say that there, definitely that's something that I would suggest doing, but not necessary. And especially if you're not decided or anything. But anyway, had to show that. That is really one of my favorite ones on that. So we're almost coming to the end, and on that I will check if you guys have questions. I just want to go over some FAQs here, and I think we've really answered most of these. but not the top one. So what if a college doesn't accept a resume? And that's a really great question. What do I do? I have this resume, or and that's kind of a waste on that. Um, but no, there are little tricks that you can do. So let's say you have this 3-page resume with all these amazing activities, and you were only able to get 10 things into the activities section, and you didn't feel it adequately really described everything. So you can use the additional information section on the Common App, which is under the writing section. There's one called additional information. There's one that you can write about challenges, and there's one where you can include additional details. And so you would click on that one, and you can copy and paste the activities that maybe got left out from activity section into that additional information section. So you could like title it additional activity details, and then you'll paste it in there. You might have to fix the formatting a little bit. You definitely will have to fix the formatting a little bit. But that's a great way. So you had it on your resume and they didn't take your resume, but here you could put it there. Just make sure when you're submitting next time to a college that is taking your resume, you want to make sure that you just close up that additional, either take that out so they're not getting that extra information, or just close that box so they're definitely not getting that. So that's a big one. We talked about the honor societies, that they should go towards the bottom. If you should have a photo, I think we covered all of these things. And just some final tips. Remember, the most important categories are going to go first, right? And then within that, you're going to list your most meaningful activities. So make it easy to read. 11 or 12 point is good. If it gets much smaller than that, it's going to be really hard to read. Arial is good. Something that's a really legible font. 1/2 to 1 inch, margins. You don't want to make it so it's like really coming to the edges and, crazy. So again, just the neat look. Again, the 2 pages is fine. Something that I think a few of these resumes I showed you were missing, and what is preferred is that you should have your personal identification on each page. So say you have a 2-page resume, you should have a header where it also on the second page includes that you're the same header with your name and information details. Honors last. Oh, and I do want to mention this. So this became popular or important, I want to say, when it was during COVID, that many activities kind of got canceled. And so maybe there was, something that kids had done, but then they couldn't do it that year because of COVID. So it was important to kind of put a footnote, but that still applies because maybe you're an athlete who has had an injury, and so in 10th grade you couldn't compete, so it's showing you did 9th, 11th, 12th, and that looks a little strange, but you can put a footnote and say, asterisk, 10th grade I couldn't compete because I hurt my foot. That would be a good footnote. Anyway, so that's that. And that's really basically everything. Let me wrap up, and then I'm going to go over and see if there's anything that you have burning questions in the chat. I hope I answered a lot of your questions. I know I went through a lot of things. Just wanted to tell you about upcoming webinar that we have that's going to discuss understanding your PSAT scores, and that's with our educational consultant Kathy Hart, who's awesome, and that's going to be on Wednesday, November 19th at 6:30, so you can sign up for that now at scorewebinar.com. We have all kinds of other webinars that you can find at scorewebinars.com, and just with awesome information. So lots of wonderful things for all facets of the college application process, so you can look through those, and really great free resources for you. And right now, we are running some special promotions, which is great, really, for our seniors right now who are getting ready, to submit, especially early deadlines around the corner. So there's a college application essay review for $99, which is a great deal. Um, I think they will review your essay, and I think you can do feedback once, and they will really help you get your essay up to snuff. And then a common app review for $500, which is a much more in-depth review of all your activities, your whole common app, and your college questions, I believe, everything. So with that QR code, if you scan that, you should be able to find out more details about those specials. And you can contact us at those numbers if you need any help with any part of the process. We have a really amazing team of consultants. All right, so let's get to your questions. And I see one question. If we are not using personal pronouns, I, on a resume, should we also not use adjectives like possessive adjectives? Okay, good question. You, yeah, that is so dependent on what you're saying, but I would say yes. Usually, you can. You can say my, achieved such and such at my high school. You can definitely use my. We're just not putting I in there. And also, don't do that in the activity section. Don't waste one of those valuable characters with that word I. But yeah, I think, it does show up. And I want to say, on rare occasion, the I can be there if it's something like within a long explanation, and you need the I in there. I don't think it's 100% rule, but that's it. Let me just give you my email on the screen, so you have that. And if anybody has any questions that I didn't answer, you can definitely feel free to email me. And if there's any other questions, I'll give you a second to put anything in the chat. If not, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you all go create resumes wherever you are in the process, and really enjoy that, seeing yourself on paper and all the wonderful things, because I know you're all amazing students and parents who are here that are behind those students, and just really you pat yourself on the back for all that you do and accomplish in high school. So thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.